My name is Gib Veconi. I'm the Secretary of the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of why we're here, synthesizing some of everything you just heard and talking a little bit about where the project is headed in the future. But before I do that, I want to just sort of summarize and say that one of the things that's behind all of these issues you've been hearing about tonight, the problems in keeping the project on schedule, the problems in meeting the affordable housing commitments, the problems with locating such traffic-intensive uses all together, all in some way relate to the fact that this was a project that was done outside of the typical New York City land use process, where there was absolutely no public review through our community boards or through our city council, and no elected official from Brooklyn has ever voted on this project. So, as people who live in Brooklyn, we have been completely unrepresented in this process, and we don't have anything resembling real urban planning going on here. We have a lot of stuff that maybe represented at one point some good intentions, but isn't being realized as part of a plan that works for this part of Brooklyn. And we believe it's time for that to change. The reason we believe it's time for that to change is because if you look at the history of Atlantic Yards, about every 5 years, since 10 years ago, they need a lifeline. 10 years ago, as Joanne pointed out, they were unable to move forward with the arena and needed a lifeline from a Russian oligarch. 5 years after that, in 2014, they were unable to move forward with any more housing, and they needed a lifeline from a Shanghai-based developer owned by the government of China. And we're now at a point when even that developer is not in a position to move forward with the project in the way it was originally conceived. So what's happening? Well, what's happening now is that Greenland Forest City Partners, which owns effectively all of the rights in the project right now, is not building new buildings. Instead, they're either selling the development leases to the lots at Atlantic Yards, which they've done with 3 lots that are called B12, B13, and B15, or they're doing partnerships with other developers. So, Michelle mentioned the announcement earlier in the week about them being ready to begin building a platform over the rail yards, but there are no buildings that are being announced with that, and the platform itself doesn't provide any affordable housing or any housing, and doesn't even provide open space on its own until there are buildings there. So there's a big question about what kind of commitment they have, given that they seem to be looking to monetize their value in the project agreements by selling their development rights to other people. Now, B12 and B13 are located on a block of Dean Street between Vanderbilt Avenue and Carlton Avenue, and after the sale of those leases closed, the new owners, which are a firm called TF Cornerstone, came back to the state of New York and said, we have a great idea, but we need more development rights on this site. We need another 105,000 square feet so we can build a field house and a fitness center. Now, 105,000 square feet is a lot of square feet. And in terms of development rights in Brooklyn today, projects, as our majority leader knows, projects that ask for those kinds of gifts have to give something back. For instance, there's a project a major developer is proposing in Boring Mill right now, where they look for an additional 40,000 feet of development rights, and in exchange they promise 60,000 square feet for a public school. So the public got nothing from the state for this 105,000 square feet, and the state approved it in a way that bypassed the very limited public review that would have been available under what's called the UDC law, the New York State law, through which Atlantic Yards was approved. So our concern here is that going forward, this could be the model for how new changes come to the project. That additional development rights get requested, offered, transferred. The public is not involved in the process. Our elected officials are not involved in the process. There are no public benefits associated with this. And we get, out of a public-private partnership, we get nothing. It's not a way for this project to go forward with all of the subsidy and all of the direct public aid that has gone into it. A couple things that we want to highlight here. One of the areas that we're watching, this isn't something that's probably going to be announced tomorrow, but originally probably recognize this. This is the Barclays Center Arena. You probably recognize that there's a nice subway entrance in front that has a little green roof over it. That was supposed to have a very tall building on it, something that was going to look something like this. All right, you see this building here. That was supposed to go in front of the arena, and a shorter one was supposed to go across the street in a place called Site 5, which is where PC Richardson Models is now. I guess it probably wouldn't surprise anyone to hear the developers don't think they can put a building in front of the arena anymore. They built the big Oculus there, there's a subway entrance, it would be extremely disruptive to do it, but they have all of this approved development rights. What do you think they want to do with it? They want to move it across the street. And they want to build a very tall building across the street.
When you say across the street, what is
Models.
Where PC Richardson Models is.
When you say very tall, how very tall is it?
So no specific plans have been released for this so far, but the estimates based on some preliminary briefings that they gave several years ago to elected officials and to the Department of City Planning suggest might be a building, you know, maybe 800 feet tall or so, similar in scale to maybe 80 Flatbush. You know, a major new element on the skyline, let's say.
That's residential?
No. Programming would be unknown. The residential programming that was originally intended for the project didn't include Site 5. It included the area over the rail yards, which is now, you know, its future development is somewhat in question because of the need to build a platform there. So this Site 5 space was actually supposed to be commercial, retail, maybe a hotel. We don't know. There are a number of conditions there that are obstacles to this moving forward, including litigation with one of the property owners on that block. But the thing to keep in mind here is that the developers have a piggy bank of density that was supposed to be in front of the arena that can be moved anywhere else in the project. And when that gets moved, there is no response, there's no absolute requirement that that move be subject to public review. That could potentially happen in different ways that don't include the public. It's possible that that could mean that we'll have more than the 6,430 apartments that were originally approved. The buildings that are now being constructed have more apartments in them than were originally planned for those buildings when the developers last released the plan to the public in 2014. That's because they're all rental apartments now and they're making them smaller. So they have building envelopes that have already been approved that potentially can hold more space than, can hold more apartments than would add up to 6,430. There's a requirement, I think that Michelle and Bernal alluded to it, that the project deliver 35% of its units as affordable. That number certainly applies to the 6,430 units, not clear if it applies to additional units, and so it's potential that additional apartments could be built that don't actually add to the affordable total for the project beyond the 2,250 that have already been committed. So these are all things people in Brooklyn care about. They care about the kind of buildings that get built here, they care about the kind of affordable housing that gets provided, and we need some certainty about the direction this project is going. In short, the public deserves a real plan. And with that, I'm going to